So first, I want to take you on a little journey, trying to look at whales and walruses from space. But first, we're going to go back to like the start. This is the first satellite images that was taken of Earth from space. I mean, it's really cool, but you can't really see much. But it kind of got it started that maybe if we were to get better satellites out there, we could get even better imagery and we could monitor Earth from far. And Landsat was Landsat 1 started the Landsat program in 1972, and its spatial resolution was much improved than this picture. It was 120 meters. So what we mean is that any pixel in that image was 120 by 120 meters on the ground. But now if you think about a whale, even the biggest blue whale ever seen, like 33 meters, you won't see it. You won't see it. I'm like, it'll be one pixel, but not even. But actually, Landsat 1 got used for wildlife surveys. Someone tried it out for the wombat, not to detect the animal, but more to look at their burrows and look at how their habitat was changing, whether they're like expanding or reducing. So we're like, okay, it can be applied, but still we need some improvements for whales. And that came with the Iconos 2 satellite. So we moved from 120 meters to suddenly 1 meter. So you're like, okay, a whale could be a few pixels, could be a blob, could be seeing them. And someone thought about this. Ron Abile in 2002 published a study where they tried to look at humpback whales in Hawaii, but they didn't really see them. They found some blobs, but the blob looked like the small boat, so it was a bit inconclusive. What they did find, though, is they also captured an image of SeaWorld, and they knew that there was an orca in one of the tank, and the 2 dark pixels that it's pointing to is the orca. I mean, this is cool, but if you want to extend this to the real world outside the tank, we need a lot more improvements on the satellite side. Then a bit of a fun fact, a few years after, I actually tried to look at whales from space. We just got Google Earth in our house and we were like scanning through things. And at some point, I don't know why, we actually tried to look at the Sydney Opera House. We're like, oh, let's look for a big thing. And at that time, I was already obsessed with whales. And I remember seeing cars and I was like, wait, I can see cars. Maybe I can find humpback whales because I knew humpback whales sometimes could be in the harbor. But I didn't have the best method. I was just scrolling through it and probably not looking at the right time. So a lot of improvement was needed on both the technological side of things and on my side. So fast forward 10 years and spatial resolution did improve. In 2009, the WorldView 2 satellite started orbiting Earth and capturing images with a 46 centimeter imagery. And this is a bit of an example to show with the right whale, if you overlay a grid with each cell being 46 by 46 centimeters, you should then hope to see whale-defining features like their fluke or their flippers. But a colleague at BAS, Peter Fretwell, they published a study and they did find right whales, but you don't really see those whale-defining features. You do see the white head callosities that's unique to that species, but then if we want to extend it to other species, we kind of need to start seeing a bit more. So 50 were like, it's okay, but it's not ideal. But luckily, the WorldView 3 was launched, and that gives 31 centimeters. And that was in 2014. Now there's a few more 30 centimeter satellites, and suddenly you're like, okay, now we should see more details. What are we going to see? So before I show you images, I kind of want to bring you back to why are we studying, why do we need to study whales? Like I've cared about whales since I was a kid, but there's a stronger conservation rationale behind it. But actually, before I go into that, I forgot about my skills did improve. So from an amateur to actually being a professional whale observers and adding other skills like being an acoustician, I worked to mitigate the disturbance from offshore industries, especially when they do their seismic surveys, because they can be quite nosy, and similar to when they are building wind farms and they're trying to hammer the pile in the ground. And they need to make sure there were no whales around, and so they need observers. And spent a little while doing that. So yeah, satellite resolution improved. I improved, and in 2016, I joined BICE. I joined Jen Jackson and Peter Fretwell on a Whale from Space PhD. And yeah, here is why do we need to study whales? So whales have the main reason that we kind of like want to study them now and know how many there are out there is because their number got brought down so low, like almost to near extinction. And for all species across all areas, like we were going everywhere. And if I give you the example of the southern right whales, there were about 100,000 individuals estimated in 1770. And then that dropped dramatically. By 1986, they were estimated to be 60, I think, females. And that kind of repeated for all the other species. But luckily, commercial whaling got banned in 82. It only came into force in 85, 86. But since then, the international whaling and other countries like the US, it's in their legislation where they have to say whether the stocks are recovering or not. So we need to be able to count how many whales are out there. And not just because we want to see if they're recovering, because now it's been more than like 3 decades. Now there are new threats, and 2 big ones are actually ship strikes. That's quite an important one. And where I grew up in the Med, it is one of the main ones for fin whales and why their numbers are going down. And then there's also entanglement in fishing gear. And actually both of these are one of the reasons behind why the North Atlantic right whale are now actually going endangered and they're not recovering from whaling. So how can we monitor? They're already, like one of the oldest method, I guess, was boats and visual surveys. They're still one of the most accurate methods, but there are some limitations I'll come to later. And from a boat, so you can do a visual, and sometimes you can even deploy acoustic equipment. It'll give you more an idea of occurrence. Trying to build abundance has been tried, but it's not as established. Then planes, yeah, that's another big one. Doing visual survey, transect survey, land places where whales migrate near the coast, like California and Australia. You can do land-based surveys. And then you also have like fixed moorings where you would put acoustic devices on it. And a newer addition are drones or UAVs. But the thing actually with UAVs, if you want to deploy it, you do need to reach somewhere on land that's near your area of interest or go there by boat. So all these methods can go where we can go. There's none, but whales might be going in other places where we can't go. And this is where satellite comes in, because satellites are orbiting constantly around, capturing images on order or constantly. And so they can help us study regions that we've never been before, just very rarely. And also go there more frequently, because sometimes we can only get like surveys every 5 or 10 years. But certainly with satellites, you could do that every year or even more often if possible. And another big one, that's more true to walruses actually, it's non-invasive. Walruses tend to get really spooked by boat and plane noises. So having a technique that we know is not going to disturb them is a massive plus. And then it should be seen as a complementary tool and not as replacing all the previous method that existed. And it has like great power for these remote regions, like the polar regions. So yeah, PhD, I used the WorldView 3, 30 centimeter special resolution. And I decided to focus on 4 different areas. And areas where we knew that there would only be one species present at a time, because it's early stages. We don't really know actually if we can see whales properly. So, and I looked at 4 different species of different shapes and colors, see like kind of the breadth of what can our eyes see. So we looked at humpback whales that Ron Abile tried in 2002 with Iconos, in the same location in Hawaii where it's a known breeding ground. Then we also looked at the southern right whale, similar to fret whale and colleague, and same location. And then gray whale in a gorgeous lagoon in Mexico where they're known to come and give birth. And the last place, that one is quite special to me because fin whale are the first whale I got to see in the wild and actually in that same location. So I'm kind of wondering, did I see any of these whales in satellite in real? So yeah. Now, we actually got really, really good images for some. Sometimes they just look like blobs, but we did get imagery like this. And that's gray whales. And we can finally see the fluke. You can see those whale defining features. So we're able to confidently identify whales from satellite imagery by not needing to be right next to the whale to prove the observation. Then fin whale, we actually can even see the flipper this time. And it's not necessarily as clear on that image, and we never really mentioned it, but the thing with fin whale is that right lower jaw is white, And on that one, it kind of gives the impression that at the top of their mouth, it's a bit brighter than the rest of the body, although it is illuminated from their right side. So there's a bit of confusion there. Then right whale, got to see them really well. That one does appear quite white and not as black as you would expect. And we think it's because it had just surfaced, and with the water, it just gave like a really intense reflection. But the whole shape, like the fluke and the body shape, I got to see it. And in that image, there were actually also some whales below the surface, and you can see their head callosity so well. So it was really promising. Where we were a bit more surprised were humpback whales, because we thought these are so easy to see if you go on a boat, but from satellite actually it's a bit more conspicuous. And I was thinking, oh, I'll be able to see their really long flippers. But then some of them sometimes have their flippers are mostly black and not white, like I seem to have it in my head. So that's why here, like you kind of can distinguish one of the flipper for one of the two whales, but yeah, it's a bit tricky. What's really cool in that image, though, is you get to see those white circles behind it. That kind of tells you these are whales because those are footprints. So when they swim, they leave those surface at the surface. But what's good with satellite is it can go beyond what our human eye can see, because each pixel is going to contain different values. Because the WorldView 3 has like 8 sensors. So it's going to get an image in the blue, in the green, in the red, like different colors. And then we can try and see, oh, could I use that to differentiate the species and even from their environment? So it's something I tried, but it didn't really work, because you see they all have the same shape. That's the 4 species. There's not one of them with a peak in the green band. You're like, okay. But the issue was the only pure pixels I could get were of whale below the surface. So I thought, what if I could get spectral signature of whales below the surface? Now, in the idea is great, but in practice it's quite hard, because the equipment you want to use for that is a spectroradiometer, which you have to point at the whale for at least 30 seconds, then at a control panel, then back to the whale, the control panel, and it takes a while. You need at least 5 minutes. And if you're at sea and the whale's moving, you're not going to make that happen. So I thought, okay, next stage. They do strand, and sometimes, so we could maybe go measure it on strandings, but that's a bit more unlikely to happen. So I thought, when they do have stranding, they do collect skin samples. So why if I measured that? So I went and looked and thought a few frozen skin samples from colleagues on the US East Coast. And then we were thinking we knew it wasn't ideal. We wanted it on the whale, ideally. But so I was invited by Dr. Craig George and whaling captains to come to their subsistence hunt in Reykjavik, and I was able to measure on some of their whales. But it kind of showed the same, like there was no difference. There wasn't like it was the same shape. All these lines are the same shape. So they're same signatures, different species. But there the issue was actually we found using the frozen samples that had actually kind of like skin burn. So we're like, oh, actually this is not working. We really need actually to measure it on the whale. So when initially I was thinking like, let's do it from a boat, in between we found out actually you can have this hyperspectral camera you can attach to drones and planes. So we were like, maybe we should try that. So it's been in the open, suggested to people to try. Now, another thing is I do love going through satellite imagery and looking for whales, but it does take time, and it was only for a few regions. If we want to extend this to ocean, like different oceans and seas and all ocean basin scale, it's like, we're going to need automation. It's going to take a while to go through all the imagery. But at the time I was looking at this, machine learning was being mentioned for wildlife, but it wasn't really applied yet. And I also wanted to go from, let's check if the least complex method can actually work, and then try a few more complex methods. So I focused on 4 different methods. I looked at unsupervised classification. This is easy. You just give your image and you're like, here are 2 classes, give me whale, no whales. You can give more, like 4 or 5 if you feel like your environment has a few other things, like if it has boats or if it has turbid and non-turbid waters. But you don't need any training data. Whereas with the other 3 methods, you do need training. So that is a bit tricky. Like with a supervised classification, you need to give some pixels, say, these pixels are whales, these pixels are not whales. And then thresholding is also based on the value contained in the pixels. But this time you'll need to have done some spectral analysis beforehand of the whale and their surroundings, knowing that they might differ, for example, in the blue bands, for that, if they reflect that much light, then that's a whale. If it's above, it's not. But so we try. And then the last one, that at least the most complex one, is object-based image analysis. So there the image is first segmented, and then rules, you choose which rules are applied to it. Is it an ellipsoid shape? Yes, it's a whale. Is it this size? Yes, it's a whale. But so we tried it, and unsupervised, of course, was really rapid. So we were thinking we want something efficient but accurate, and unsupervised wasn't accurate. I found that the supervised classification was the most accurate one, but the reality is I only tried it on one image, and Peter tried it on the one image he looked at, and he found that thresholding worked. And I think there were also some colleagues in Oxford that tried during their masters, and they found supervised classification by a different method than the one that worked for me. So it really gave the sense that machine learning could help. The one issue we had at the time is we needed large data set and standardized data set. So that's something I tried to do after my PhD. Was I had annotated all these images. Let's build like a catalog of satellite images of whales and share this for anyone to use if they want to try automated system. So here's what we got. Was about 600 annotated whales of the 4 species. It's not a lot. If you talk machine learning, you might want more. But then we had Viola Panigada joining us in 2024 that was able to up the grey whales by quite a lot, and belugas. I did the belugas like almost 1,000. So actually kind of like, I'm quite intrigued to do some stuff on the belugas now. But also what we thought would be helpful next to it, because we want people to add to it, is can they use the same method? So we tried to share like a really detailed step-by-step protocol. That was work we did with NOAA, because they're also really keen on using satellite images. And Penny's now updated that to using QGIS and Python, because I use Arc, which, as much as a lot of people use it, is still, it's not open source. Then we had a bit of data. So I've been able to like advise some students that tried the automation. And as you can see, we had quite a lot for grey whales. So Katie Green and Malaverde tried automation on the grey whale. The cool thing they did is they tried to augment the satellite image. So they took each chip and they kind of flipped the position of the whale, added some noise to increase that training data set. And then they also used drone imagery, because a few studies, like there had been at that time 2 studies of whales automation from space, and they did use drone, and we wanted to see if it helped. And they used the you only look once architecture, and it did work. And they did found, though, that it was best to just use satellite imagery. So we're really now pushing for people to help and share their data whenever they can. And now we got Holly, who joined us and who's doing automation on humpback whales. So I've been lucky. I've been in a good position where I was at the start of this field kind of developing. And so now it's been really nice to be asked to advise on projects and collaborate. And it's come from like really different sectors. It's come from government. I was part of one of the projects funded by the Canadian government, where they were trying to use satellite imagery to help. They wanted to find North Atlantic right whale near real time to help prevent ship strikes. It's been a bit more complicated, but there's been some really good outcome. And NOAA is also really keen to use satellite imagery for their stock assessment, because currently they use aerial and boat survey, and it does take a lot of time and energy to organize. So they want to explore that avenue as well. Then I've been working with 2 companies, and lately I'm working with an NGO, the National Marine Mammal Foundation, based in the US. They're quite keen on looking for dolphins. So we'll see how that works. There's been one survey that did find dolphins, but they had really easy conditions. So let's see if we can replicate it. And from that came a group from the International Whaling Commission. There's a lot of interest to see how we could use satellite imagery to monitor whales. So with Penny Clark, we're co-convening this group. It's more than 100 members. And one of the key points right now we're focusing on best practice to create the annotated data set. How do you share it? And also sharing your code, because we've got some companies involved. We don't want it to just become proprietary software. We want to encourage people to share as much as they can, so everyone can do it. And another thing we're trying to figure out is where to best use satellites for testing the method, but also to answer a conservation question. And in 2024, we had a workshop in Australia and trying to hammer this all down. So now on to walruses. Newfound love. This is a drone image I took when I got to do some field work in Svalbard. They look all cozy and cuddled. So similar story than the whales. Walruses were commercially hunted, brought to near extinction. Luckily, hunting got banned in the 30s, 50s. It differed per countries. And since then, there's the wish to know whether they're recovering, but there are new threats coming in. And the big one is climate change because of summer sea ice reduction. Walrus rely on sea ice for resting. That's their preferred habitat. They can come and rest on land, but they prefer sea ice. Then their prey, their preferred prey is clam, but they rely on primary production that then relies on the link with sea ice. How is this going to change and impact walruses? Then there's also like increased predation that's expected from killer whales, that now there's less floating sea ice caught in the way of their big dorsal fins. But the big one is actually the rise in shipping traffic, because I mentioned earlier, walrus tend to get spooked by ship noise, and we're wondering, these lines are going to pass. I mean, some of them pass all over Svalbard. So why is that going to do? And where are they going to go? Because we know when they get spooked, it leads to stampedes, and then trampling can have result in death. And now the less there's sea ice, the more they're likely to come on land, bigger group on land. So if you have a stampede with a larger group, there'll be more mortality. So yeah, we need to monitor how, with these new threats, walrus distribution is changing, whether it's changing or not. That's the current distribution for the Atlantic walrus. And then also population, that's the walrus population in Svalbard. You can see the numbers went up after commercial hunting got banned, but what's going to happen now there? The habitat is changing. So monitored mostly aerial surveys. It's much easier when you try and count them from land. We tried when we went to Svalbard and we counted by half. So aerial is the preferred way, either by plane or by drones. But if you do drones, you kind of need to go there, either make your way from land, or you need to go there by boat. And then this is us. Yeah, when we went in Svalbard, we had to take that little boat to go and survey this group. So, but they same. If you want to go anywhere with a boat or a plane, you're going to be quite limited. There's a lot of places in the Arctic where walruses are where we can't go. And we keep discovering new hole-out sites in satellite imagery just because we've never been. So satellite has the real potential to help there. And that's why 5 years ago, I joined the Walrus from Space project. It's between the WWF and the British Antarctic Survey. It was meant to be 5 years, but we've added another year to it. And the idea is that every year we collect imagery and we search and count walruses. But because we're looking through a lot of imagery, we thought, let's try citizen science, because at the time there was no training available for AI. So here's the distribution of walruses. We focused on the Atlantic subpopulation, subspecies, sorry, and the lactec population. But we had to actually revise that and remove all the Russian holdout sites after the conflict. So one first outcome that actually came out of it, I'll come back to the citizen science later, is we needed to know how are we going to validate the counts we have in satellite imagery. The best way to do this is to have a drone image and a satellite image at the same time. So that's what we tried to do going to Svalbard. So our plan was to visit the 3 red dots. And on the 15th of July, we got a bit delayed, but actually that played in our favor. The research team that was using the boat before was like delayed by an hour or two, but it meant that then we had the results we actually needed. And we found walruses, first place we went to, so very excited. First time I got to see them. Then we moved west to Murray Pinton, but didn't find any. Then we went north to Richard Laguna and found another 4. So happy time, first day. Then we tried to go out again on the 17th of July. No walrus. We saw a few in the water. And then we went again on the 20th of July, and we only found them at Sarstengen. And we were trying to go and get as many drone imagery as we could, because for that 1 week, we had asked the satellite company to get an imagery for us, and they were only going to get one because of funding. So we were trying to just be out anytime we could. But we got really lucky because we got a satellite match. Because on that day we got this drone, this satellite image was captured. And here are the two drone images we captured. And you can see one is in the cloud, but we didn't really care about that one. It was just 4 walruses. But the one at the bottom, south, that's the one of that image at the top. So we're like, oh, this is good. And it got even better because we are in the picture. Like, this is the walrus, and that's us walking back to our kit, and that's our little boat. So we're like, oh my God, how far apart are we from the drone imagery we captured? And it was just 15 minutes. And the other thing is we knew, like we were taking notes whether we were seeing walruses going in the water, coming back from the water, and nothing had changed for the whole time. So like, okay, we can actually compare. And we had ordered a World View 3 image. We wanted the best spatial resolution available, but I was given a 50 centimeter image. So I was like, there's a bit of a problem there. I checked, and it was the World View 3 who captured the image. So I was like, oh, it's not that they got another satellite to do it. No, it's actually the World View 3 that has 30. So then I got the 30 for free. And that was actually really helpful for the Walrus project, because to cover all the areas I showed you earlier, we were not able to just use the World View 3. Now there's more 30 centimeter satellite, but at the time of the project, there wasn't. So we've been using a lot of the 50 centimeter resolution satellite. So it would be good to see how accurate we can be with either. And then we thought, wait, we know that this company had just created an algorithm that can increase the spatial resolution of their 30 to 15. Ultimately, it's a fake image, but we thought, let's see if it can improve counting, because if it does, it's worth paying the extra. So we had a really good data set to see how, kind of compare the public and the experts, and also like, what's the best spatial resolution to count walruses at? Because the higher the spatial resolution, the higher the cost. And so we're like, okay, what's the lowest resolution we could count walruses accurately in the imagery? So that's what we found. So here on the left, you get the walrus count. The left graph, that was the crowd count, and which a lot of you contributed to, so thank you. On the right is the experts. And so for both of them, the left count is the drone, and then it's the satellite. It's going from like high to low spatial resolution. So first thing we saw is there were 73 walruses, and we undercounted, everyone undercounted in satellite imagery. The expert less, but everyone kind of did. Then 30 centimeter in this instance came out to be better. And then the crowd is variable, but that's fine. We can create a correction factor, and that's one thing that Jeremy is helping with. So all in all, pretty happy with it, but we did do it for a very ideal condition that it was 70 walruses. It's easy to count. You're not really going to get fatigued, and they were spread out. But the reality is also this. And so I really want to repeat it for that. And we tried in Canada a few years ago, but we didn't get a boat. You see, it's really hard to get a boat to go and survey your animals. But now we're trying to see, thinking of maybe Svalbard. There's one holdout that has quite a lot of walrus, and we're hoping to maybe repeat it there. And similar to the whale world, walrus experts are really keen on this method. They actually are the one that started it. So in 2023, we all met trying to discuss, okay, how satellites can help survey walruses. Like if you want to answer the different conservation question, like where can it help and where can it definitely not? So one of the first things that actually came out of this workshop is the Atlantic walrus holdout site database. One exists for the Pacific subspecies, but there were, for the Atlantic, it was a bit all over the place. So it's now grouped in one place in the Arctic Biodiversity Data Source. That's part of CAF, the Conservation for Arctic for Flora and Fauna. And another thing that is now under review, that I'm quite excited about this to come out, is that's our advice. We kind of go with, we need to monitor population size, trends, and distribution shifts. And how can satellites help with this? So in this piece of work, if it ever comes out, it'll just give some advice of where to go and what worked and what we should try. Now, back on citizen science. So it's still ongoing. If you want to take part, you can help us search walruses. So every year for 5 years, we got imagery. So first imagery collection, then the search part happened. And this is what the crowd, if they signed up, would see. They get loads of different image tips, and they would be asked, do you see a walrus, yes or no? We had to add the other wildlife present because in the first year, someone said yes, walrus when they saw belugas, and we're like, okay, we heard you. You're quite keen to detect anything else, so we'll add something for that because we just want walrus, but we see that. And then once we knew which image types had walrus, these were fed into a counting campaign, and that's what they were asked to do. Is if you saw a tight group, draw an outline around it. If you see a few individuals outside and you could see them clearly, just put a point. So that's almost finished. The public did their part, but now we wanted the experts also to count, but we discovered a bug. And that bug has been taking almost a year to get fixed. It's not fixed yet. Then year 2, we have the imagery collection. The crowd has searched it. We haven't done the count because of that bug. Year 3, we've got the imagery, and we are starting the search. If you want to help, you can help with that one. But counting's not happened. And year 4 and 5, we just got the imagery. And because we already had to add a year, we thought maybe we need to change our strategy. So I'm actually back. Yeah, so the issue was bugs. And actually, we think Peter got bored. The first year of the search took 3 months. The second year of search took almost 2 years. So we thought, it's not for everyone. I get it. It can be quite boring going through imagery. So now we thought the satellite company we use has this new platform. So I'm back doing what I like and going through imagery, and this time looking for walruses. And for Svalbard, it's been amazing. We found so many of the whole outside, and I found 4 new ones, confirmed with the experts. So there's some promise there. And now I'd like to leave you with this gorgeous image I found while looking for walruses. You got this huge pod of beluga. I think they were about, try to count, I don't know, 100, 150, forgot. But yeah, thank you. Oh yeah, I forgot. Did you find the walruses and the whales? I don't know. But yeah, thank you.